done something.
Well, yeah, I did. I got the coffee. I made the coffee. And I had to, cut anything out of, the local periodicals or that are about the authors that the publishing company represented.
It's only supposed to do...
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were supposed to do a bigger chunk.
No, we always knew it was only going to be 2 series. So I'm completely, from the beginning, it's always been what I've known, and that then the part is...
It's almost a safety thing. And subtlety, and that's what we get from William and Kate, a lot of subtlety.
No one, not the producers, not the staff, not even the guests backstage, could have predicted what would happen that night. The show was expected to run as usual. A few laughs, some buzzworthy moments, a likable prince playing to a warm audience. But within a matter of minutes, the entire production had spiraled into something very different. Because Prince Harry, once the cheeky, charming royal, stood up, removed his mic, and walked off the set with no explanation.
Overriding kind of feeling about Harry and Meghan over there at this point?
Well, it's difficult. I think in the press, it's very kind of anti them.
Yes.
And it's been sort of a gift.
A live walkout. No smile. No wave. No recovery. And the world, watching from their screens at home, could not believe what they'd just seen. Prince Harry's return to London had been carefully orchestrated. The public appearances were few and selective. The messaging was tight. His communications team had worked overtime crafting a narrative about celebration, service, and reconnection with Britain, especially ahead of the 10-year anniversary of the Invictus Games.
I think, as a man, it's his job to protect his family, so I'm with him.
His team believed that taking part in a high-profile talk show would help charm the public. After all, he wasn't doing tense sit-downs with journalists. This was entertainment. Light-hearted laughter. Audience applause. Easy, right? Harry himself reportedly believed it was exactly what he needed to show a lighter, more relatable side. Behind the scenes, however, there were nerves. And with reason. TV talk shows are unpredictable, especially in the UK. Especially when the host isn't known for reverence toward royals.
Between a rock and a hard place, and I suppose you'd call
Who's
that
the
no
rock?
man's
Who's the hard
land.
place?
Well, this is the thing. On the one hand, you've got a woman who's known as Tungsten because she's so steely.
And especially when the guest walking in still stirs emotions across a divided public. This wasn't just a guest appearance. This was part of a wider, unspoken campaign, a soft-launch comeback tour for Harry in the UK. His reputation had taken significant blows. From the Oprah interview to the Netflix series to the memoir, public trust had eroded.
It's almost a safety thing. And subtlety, and that's what we get from William and Kate, a lot of subtlety.
The lines between royal duty and personal grievance had blurred past the point of recognition. And now, back in his home country, he was facing a much colder audience. This interview was supposed to take back control. His team wanted to position Harry as grounded but misunderstood. Still royal yet fully human. Someone who could laugh at himself. Someone who was brave enough to step back into the arena. What they hadn't planned for. Him walking right out of it. The exact moment things turned was subtle, even if it was dramatic in hindsight. What had been projected as a light-hearted interview suddenly shifted. Viewers at home noticed the change in Harry's body language. He stopped engaging, looked off stage, and his posture stiffened. The live audience, meanwhile, had no idea what was about to happen. Moments later, without fanfare or explanation, Prince Harry disconnected his mic and left the stage. Producers were blindsided. Audience coordinators tried to keep the clapping going, uncertain whether it was part of the show. Staff watching from backstage reportedly stood frozen. And the host? Caught off guard, but as always, quick on his feet and quick with a quip that tried to smooth things over. But even then, nobody was laughing in the way they were a few minutes earlier. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, an eerie tension settled over the entire set. Harry didn't return. There were no backstage photos shared afterward. No quotes. No handshake moments. Just silence, and the immediate feeling that something serious had just happened. Reports suggest that, behind the curtain, Harry was visibly upset. Not angry in a performative way, but genuinely emotionally rattled. Team members were scrambling to manage the fallout. Internally, what had started as a short TV appearance was now being treated like a full-blown crisis. And it wouldn't stay confined to the studio for long. Within hours, the footage of the walk-off had gone viral. Clips spread across social platforms faster than most breaking news events. Theories flew. Memes formed. And a clear narrative began to take shape. Harry couldn't take the heat. Mainstream media picked it up the next morning. British tabloids all ran variations of the same message. The prince had cracked under a little pressure in front of a live audience on home soil. The front pages called it a meltdown. Commentators labeled it disrespectful, unprofessional, or even embarrassing. Others, particularly former supporters, called it disappointing. This wasn't a gotcha interview. It wasn't Piers Morgan or hardball politics. It was a talk show. And yet Harry walked away, not with dignity, but with the optics of someone who hadn't emotionally prepared for the moment. Interestingly, American audiences were more divided. Some blamed the studio for being too aggressive, too smug, or tone-deaf. But even in the US, Harry didn't receive the full support he once might have. More and more celebrity commentators began pulling back their praise. Talk show hosts now were openly questioning whether Harry and Meghan had overplayed their hand. Hollywood, once warm and wide open to the Sussex brand, was watching this implosion unfold in real time. This wasn't just about one TV appearance. This was about whether Harry could still hold that rare balance between familiarity and admiration, between celebrity and royalty. And now it seemed he was losing both. The collateral damage of Harry's walkout hit far beyond the tabloids. Sources within the Invictus Foundation said that the prince's storm-off immediately raised tensions with sponsors and organizational leaders. There were concerns about instability, about whether Harry could handle the increasing attention as the face of the games. Internal meetings were reportedly held within 48 hours. Some sponsors quietly reached out, requesting reassurance. Worse, multiple veterans, both involved and retired, declined to defend the prince when approached by media. For many, the optics were just hard to ignore. They weren't angry. They were puzzled. Here was a man they once considered one of them. Tough, resilient, measured. And yet, when faced with a bit of public tension, he chose to walk away. That didn't sit right. One of the most telling parts of the fallout came from within palace walls. The royal family, masters in public silence, did what they do best. They said absolutely nothing. There were no quotes, no supportive messages, no warm, impersonal wish-him-well statements, just a respectful, approving quiet that many royal observers claimed spoke louder than any disavowal. Insiders claimed that King Charles opted to avoid any private meetings with Harry while he was still in the UK. The optics were now not only off-brand, they were toxic. Even those within Harry's own circle noted that the palace's restraint felt like quiet vindication, as though they'd been waiting for the public to see what they already knew, that Harry wasn't quite built for this world anymore. Beyond the episode, far greater stakes were quietly unraveling in Southern California. The Sussex brand, once valued in the hundreds of millions by media analysts, saw partners begin backing away. Netflix executives were reportedly reassessing their long-term commitments. Meghan's podcast deal with Spotify had already ended on uncertain terms, and now Harry's media bookings were looking far riskier. Even their nonprofit, Archwell, had begun downscaling quietly months before, but now that narrative was being freshly linked to the walkout. Was this the moment the Sussexes stopped being hot? Industry insiders whispered about their volatility. Execs began privately admitting that aligning with the couple came with emotional risk. Reputation matters. And for the first time, the star appeal of the Sussex name was in doubt. The day after the incident, reports emerged from multiple outlets that Harry had cancelled at least 2 remaining appearances during his stay. One source claimed he was deeply upset and replaying the show over and over. Another insider added that he was ignoring most calls from PR advisors after the incident. The most chilling detail? That he watched the recording on a loop, trying to figure out minute by minute where it all went wrong. He didn't just feel embarrassed. He felt betrayed, exposed, lost. Back in Montecito, Meghan maintained strategic silence. Behind her silence, many read calculation or control. For others, it read like abandonment. Either way, Harry faced what he feared most, a public audience that was no longer sure what he stood for. Once celebrated as the modern, relatable royal, the one who'd served in war zones, built foundations, and pulled the monarchy into the smartphone era, Prince Harry now stood completely alone on the world stage. His image questioned, his causes overshadowed, his brand weakened. And all of it collapsed the moment he walked off a brightly lit soundstage and into the darkest corner of the public spotlight. Public doesn't hate Harry, but more dangerously, they've stopped sympathizing. That moment on stage wasn't just a personal low. It was a symbolic turning point where one of the most famous men on earth realized the cost of losing the room. The show moved on. The audience laughed nervously. Cameras rolled to a stop. But for Harry, the consequences were just beginning. Question now isn't what happened on stage. Question is, what happens next? Because if this was a comeback tour, it may have ended before it ever really began.